Welcome back to our 75th episode of the Launcher Farm Show, where I interview Kenny Klaus with Keller Williams in Arizona. In this episode, Kenny and I talk about why you need to make farming a fundamental part of your business if you want to stay relevant and stay in this business in the long run. And Kenny shares how you can level off the ups and downs of real estate and build a more sustainable and predictable business by truly mastering farming. And we talk about what strategies you can use to build more trust and likability and stand out from the competition so that you can gain more market share in today's world. And Kenny shares a super easy way to add value to local businesses and connectors in the community to generate more referrals and a steady flow of deals. And we talk about how to ensure your amazing ideas come to fruition and what you need to do to ensure they succeed at a high level. Plus, we talk about a ton of other ideas that you can use to grow your geographic farm. So be sure to check out this episode, like and subscribe, and enjoy the episode with Kenny. Welcome back to another episode of the Launcher Farm Show. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and today we've got a great guest. It's Kenny Klaus with Keller Williams in Arizona. So Kenny, take a second, tell us a bit about yourself and why you're here.
Yeah, man, Ryan, I appreciate the opportunity, what you're doing with the group is I believe that geographic farming or just farming in general, there's multiple types of farming, but geographic has always been kind of my niche. I started in 2001. And just a little perspective on it, as most people can relate, is we've all seen the FedEx trucks driving around, and that. So I was the FedEx guy for 13 years, wow. And as I started seeing real estate in one of the areas, one of my routes, I just started thinking, man, this seems to make a ton of sense to me. These guys have signs all over the neighborhood here, and so I looked at it from as a FedEx guy, you either had a route or you were what we called a swing driver, which meant whoever was sick, vacation, you just filled in.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the difference between the two was night and day.
Yeah.
I mean, because everybody loved their driver for the most part, and the driver knew, do I deliver to the front or the back? Who signs for it? What time do they like things? It's that customer service side of it. When you're just flying from house to house in business, and I mean, it's frustrating. It's your customer service isn't good. Your attitude isn't quite as good because you're struggling. And then I got my own route eventually. And next thing you know, it was kind of autopilot. Like you knew the businesses, you knew the residential. And so when I started farming real estate about 2 years into my, getting my license, I just picked a neighborhood and I said, if I can be here 10 years from now, I think things are going to look pretty good.
Yep.
And just started with that mindset was, how do I create, from an efficiency standpoint, from a knowledge standpoint, meaning knowing what's happening in the area, what's happening with business, what's happening with schools, what's happening with builders, growth, all those things.
Yeah.
Because in the Phoenix market here, we're pretty spread out. We're not like a lot of big cities where they go vertical.
Right.
We're more pushing out. And so, you could be in Phoenix and it could be an hour drive to the other side of town, for example, and yet you don't even know it because it's contiguous. It just doesn't stop. Yeah. And so, when I looked at the FedEx days, it wasn't like packages came down the belt and, Ryan, you took one, then I took the next one, and then so-and-so did. We all took geographic areas. Yep. And so we got to know its streets. And so that's kind of the foundation got me into it. Back in 2001, I really didn't know what geographic farming was. I really didn't know what I was doing. I just thought I would rather stay right in this area instead of driving all over town if I can help it. And, 2 decades later, what it's done is it's created truly a business in the community, not just a database. And that's even my financial planner is like, you're the only guy I have that actually has a sellable business at this point because it's not dependent on me anymore. It's systems and models and, what we do consistently every month. And so that's been pretty exciting. And then what happens is it spreads out from there, right? Yep. So instead of kind of shotgunning, laser focus, and then it turns into these outliers who, hey, can you help us over here? Are we doing this? sign calls, leads, pass, repeat, all that stuff. So, it's been really cool. I've been blessed, with KW. Gary had put me on stage to talk about this stuff, which really then held me accountable in 2010 and made sure that, we were doing all these things and at a high level. But, he's always said too, if he started over today, it would be building a a geographic farm. And, although things have changed within that, as you well know, on how we connect with people,
Yep.
it's still connecting with people, and it's still building brand and recognition, within a geographic area. And that gives you that foundation to be able to invest, in your business, to have consistent income in a very inconsistent business, right? Real estate,
Yeah.
it usually looks like a heartbeat monitor for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And so that was always kind of my, my vision or goal was, I don't want to have that if I can help it. And I knew what the efficiencies, I have a little light here, I'll turn on, the efficiencies that I saw within the FedEx space that led me to really, dig in and start this. So.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack that I want to dive into. I want to start at the beginning because it's important for our viewers to know when you get started. It's for sometimes they struggle with kind of getting it launched. And obviously where you're at now is probably not where you're at as far as the systems and tools. When you got launched in that, you said the first 2 years, what did that look like for you as far as size, as far as what you did to get it launched?
Well, it was basically, we moved into a new neighborhood, which was almost 21 years ago, and we're actually still in that same house today. So, been very committed to that location. And it was just me, and I had this idea from another agent I knew in the Valley that I had always looked up to, that just kind of did like a little newsletter. And so, started with it was a little trifold, did that for 2 or 3 months, and then went to what we use today, which is essentially like a sheet of paper folded in half, which creates a booklet, and then we do 8 pages. So you basically got 2 sheets of paper folded in half, gives you 8 pages. But started with that, and we just put it through the post office. I tried putting them on doors, save some money, try these things. It just, at the end of the day, our best conversion was from the mailbox, because I think a lot of stuff here in the Valley, people don't want crap on their door, and typically because they pick it up at the front door, they have time between there and the house to throw it away. And it's usually, home services like landscaping and pool and stuff that, I don't know. So we just went, USPS, and now with EDDM through the post office, it makes it so much more affordable to do that. And so, when I teach, I always tell people my biggest thing was, when we started this, I said, I have to do this for 12 months. And so if it's $1,000 a month, I got to put $12,000 over here. The problem was, at the time, it wasn't that 12,000 was so much money. It just happened to be a little more than I had. And so, it's a little scary. But I just said, I got to commit to this. Anything in life that you want long-term results from has to be built with consistency involved, and going through the fail points, and as well as the good times. And so ironically, we got a listing the very first month. Super exciting. The problem is we were way out, new construction, all the things I teach today, I wouldn't have started probably there at the time, because, you're looking at turnover rates and all these things. Well, we didn't really have that, but I didn't really care, because I was still part-time at FedEx. So I still had an income and benefits. So it was like, the money was, it was a to come in my mind. I didn't need it today type thing. And so then I went 7 months without another listing, and there was a lot of quitting points along the way. And honestly, I didn't document my whole journey, because I didn't know I'd have a journey at the time. So, but the reality of it is that, it was scary, and I started doing like free ads back then on the back of the newsletter, and that's all I was getting was like, candles and, Mary Kay and all this, ads for stuff, and which was fine, because I was connecting and meeting people in the community, but it wasn't paying the bills. And so then month seven-ish, I got 3 listing appointments in 1 month off the newsletter.
Wow.
And that was in 2001. And I honestly don't remember a month since then that we haven't listed something in that neighborhood.
That's awesome.
And it was because, even though there may be 40, 50 signs, if there's 3 signs up, people feel like that's all they see is your sign. And,
exactly.
Like I tell most agents, a lot of them are like, kind of like swing drivers were at FedEx. They just, I'm going to try over here. I'm going to try over here. And what you realize is you're not getting any branding, any residual left behind. So you get a listing. I don't even care, honestly, if you have to do it for free or 0.5% or whatever you need to charge, because the sign is gold. Right now you have open houses, you got internet marketing, you've got, door knocking opportunities. Hey, the Johnsons just asked us to list their home, blah, blah, blah. It's getting that first sign in the yard. And then, then you got just listed, just sold, you can do. You can feature it in your newsletter. So there's so many things with just getting that sign that people, I think, sometimes forget how important, that is in the market still. Yeah. And so I just started with that, and honestly, just kept failing forward from there. I've done a lot of dumb things along the way, some dumb money, yeah. And but the one thing we've never stopped is the newsletter consistently the first of every month goes out. We had a lull in 2009, was the only time, because the market was so bad out here with short sales, and Phoenix just got crushed, that we decided to go to every other month because we just didn't really have any content. There was no new business openings. The same houses that were on the market the month before were still on the market the next month. Right. And so, but we realized that we weren't getting the same calls and traffic. And so, we went back to it, even though it was tough, the market was tough. I knew as a brand, you've got to push through it if you have a good brand. And then when you do get a name and a reputation, you can't stop then either, right?
That's super critical, because a lot of agents I find do that, where they try to pivot, they get some traction, and then they think, okay, well, now that's working, I'm going to cut back on things or do a little bit less of things and they think they can coast on that. And the reality is you should be doubling down on the things that you're doing, not just cutting back on it. And if it's working, keep testing it until it stops working, or until you hit your kind of point of diminishing returns, is what I find.
Absolutely. Well, you have to start thinking like a business owner. Like, I have a small business within a community, whether I have a storefront or not, I have a business. And to have a business, you have to have marketing, you have to have bookkeeping, you have to have, consistency in the operation, as well as, all the other training and skills that you need to have as a salesperson. And so to me, that was, we lived very humbly. Still do. And my goal is I just have to keep reinvesting into the business, because if I can get a little market share, what would it look like if I got a moving truck and wrapped that? And so in 2004, we did that. And the idea being that, FedEx, what do they have? Moving billboards all over the country. Literally you see them every day. And I'm sure some of your people are going to get off this and go, crap, I'm seeing FedEx trucks everywhere. It's just the truth. And so I went, well, what if we did that? And literally in the beginning, we would I say we, it was usually me, but I started to grow a team, somewhere in, that 03-ish range. But drive it through, like, when the kids were getting out of school, we just happened to be driving, because you have to do 15 miles an hour right in front of all the parents and families and everybody and teachers. But the idea was, if you don't have anything going on, you can't just wait for the market to come to you or people to call you. You've got it's a contact sport, right? We've kind of overused that analogy now, but it's the truth. And so however you're contacting them face to face, or they're visually seeing you, it's so we just focused all of our marketing into a geographic area, whether it was sponsorships, donations, banners at the schools. I did water bottles for a long time, where we donated those to the school with, our logo, the school logo on it. Just a lot of little things that you can do, to get out and meet people. And the fun thing is you still do all the other stuff you do in real estate, right? It's not like you just stop. It just gets easier, in my opinion. Like, if you're familiar, most people are with the disc profile, like I'm a 99I. So rejection is just not my thing, I guess. I didn't know that, but I when I did it, I was like, yep, that's me. Like, I don't, get my feelings hurt. Like, I want people to want to do business with me. And when you're having a cold call or a door knock or things that I just never did in the beginning, it just wasn't going to be my wheelhouse. I just knew I wouldn't do it consistent. But if I could get a newsletter and share some good stories and some things in there, then people were calling me. And that's a completely different conversation and a different conversion rate than people, especially today. Then it was one thing. Today, it's unbelievable, because even as agents, we're all getting all the texts and emails. You want to sell your house that you haven't even owned for 10 years. Like, the data that's out there, people are more defensive or more protective now than ever. So I think finding a way to fly under the radar, to me, was always very important. And so my newsletter is based on the zip code. So in 2003, I kind of got lucky and just started buying all the zip codes in Phoenix. And so, like 85209.com, for example. And so it made it easy. I didn't have to name all these little individual subdivisions. people knew their zip, 5 numbers, and you're done. 85209.com. There you go. And that was meant to be come across as not a marketing piece, but as an informational piece about the community in the area. And then in the center, of course, was the real estate stuff. And so it was a way to make it from the mailbox to the kitchen table, was to not come across as just, here's all that just listed, just sold. Because the people who are looking at that are the people who are thinking about real estate maybe right now. We wanted it to be where we got that, plus we just stayed top of mind. So even if they weren't, a friend asked them, or somebody they knew a name. So that was kind of the vision.
Yeah. So obviously you've tried a lot of things and there's different strategies. I think it's important. I tell agents all the time, it's one of the things I talk about is strategy stacking. How do you measure the effectiveness or the value of, do you keep it or do you lose it? Because I find a lot of agents kind of go down either the rabbit hole of doing just one strategy and then they kind of get caught up, or they try too many things and then don't really test it. So what do you use as like a litmus test to say, hey, this is working, or it's worth it, or not?
Well, so obviously, I mean, the consistency of the newsletter every month and the quality of the content, and that's extremely important. A lot of these newspapers that are out there and things that you can go buy, if it's easy, it typically doesn't have the same return as somebody who's doing work. And because their stories are very generic, where people can get that anywhere. They can get it in their phone in a second today. What we're trying to do is, you know, the little league signups, when that is, the car show at the high school, you know, the upcoming football schedule, things that are hyper local to the community. You know, we interview a business owner who's opening a new store to kind of meet the neighborhood. So it's very purposeful. That's why most don't do it at that level, because it is that ugly 4-letter word, right? It's work. But the reality of it is, if you put your head down for 2 years, you do the work, you can build a foundation that you can go from I to we to where I'm at now, where they do it. But you have that consistency. And so I think, you know, if the newsletter was number one, I mean, I think the moving truck for us was big. I eventually bought a commercial building in 2005 in the farm so that we have visibility. Now we have 3 wrapped vehicles, so they're seeing them running around. But just, you know, putting up, you know, we used to put a lot of sign writers on there. So we'd have our sign writer, plus we'd have 85209.com on there, just so that neighbors and community would see it. It's visible. And then being involved with, you know, the schools was kind of big early on, like football coach. We'd interview them before the beginning of every season, the principal, like I said, business owners. And then, oh gosh, it's been probably well over a decade ago now, Wells Fargo, a local bank here that we use, came to me and said, hey, you know, we'd like to start like a little neighborhood business networking meeting. Would you be interested in helping us kind of lead it and market it? And they said, we'll every new business customer, we'll put a flyer in for it. And that way it makes us look good, like we're helping them get acclimated to the neighborhood and things. And that lasted for a few months with them. And they kind of quit showing up to the meetings and just kind of, so we moved it to a restaurant in the area. And then eventually I own 5 restaurants now, but I ended up buying a restaurant in the community, and we had a big private back room. And I'm like, man, we could hold our events there, our, you know, all these things. And so we started doing that, and that's where it's been since. Now, obviously now we've been on Zoom because of it, but everything I do is meant to be purposeful and not feel salesy. So, you know, if I come into your business and say you're an insurance agent, Ryan, I walk into your American Family office, it's like, you know, hey, I'm Kenny Klaus with 85209.com, you know, our community connection newsletter, and you have a copy of it. You say, here's what we're doing. You know, is there anything that you'd like to share with your business, or that we could put in here, maybe do a story about, you know, something unique that you offer? You know, everybody knows insurance, but is there something? Oh, and by the way, we have a neighborhood network group where we try to keep local dollars in the community. Would that be something that interests you? And it's really hard to say no to that, right? So, and then we started buying little newsletter stands, and then we would leave them in all the businesses. And it's funny, when I was on stage with Gary in 2010, he said, I was telling him this story, and he's like, I was like, well, yeah, Gary, I just kind of call it running my realtor route, right? Like FedEx, I just run my route. So every month, it gives me purpose to have to go back to those businesses to refill the newsletters with the new copy. And of course, then we were teaching a class on it. We did a designation called CLME, Certified Local Market Expert, and Realtor Route was one of the episodes. And we got a letter from NAR attorneys, and we couldn't use the word realtor.
Oh, okay.
so kind of funny how things happen, but you're not doing well until you're causing problems out there. So, but yeah, and again, you mentioned it earlier, but just stacking, right? Like if you read Atomic Habits, it's just habit stacking. So, for me, especially when you're new, you don't have a lot going on, right? So what you do have is time. And so, but if your time is hanging out in the office, listening to everybody else complain about the market, or there's no inventory, or where you're or on social media, hoping someone's going to reach out to you, or you can be out visiting some of the businesses. You can be out, having your logo embroidered on your shirt so people are seeing it. I started with magnets on my car because I could afford them until I could afford to, eventually wrap something, which now that cost has come way down too. But the point was, you find things intentionally to be doing out there. And in the beginning, the hardest part, like I said, is a lot of that you're seeking out in the beginning. Now, honestly, and we've gotten probably a little soft with this because now people are just calling us. Can you support this? Here's this, the Little League. It's like, we'll put your names on the back of the jerseys. Can we do this? So it's very interesting once there's a tipping point, but you have to get to that point and then keep going past that a ways to really secure that. But, things I mentioned, like Network Group, we still do today. Like we still do, most of this stuff. Because it's still relevant. The internet has changed a lot of things. The free ads in the newsletter, those have been gone for years, because by the time they hit the newsletter and got out, it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks old. Whereas they can just go on OfferUp or Craigslist, places like that. So certain things we had to adapt to, which is fine. But now videos come along, so you can, interview. Like we did a dry cleaner years ago, and he was so nervous to do it. And we're like, no, we're just going to talk about, and what's the craziest thing that you've, dry cleaned. And because one day I was in there and I saw like wedding dresses hanging there, like a sleeping bag. And I was like, man, I didn't even know you guys did this stuff. So that's how it started. And it was funny because he got dressed up for it. We did this video. It was a blast. When he got done and he saw we did what we said we were going to do, right? And we gave him a copy so he could share on his social media. And he said, you know what, Kenny, I've got, probably 10,000 plus bags, on all these clothes that go out every month. Would you want to give me some marketing material? I'll just staple them to every bag for you.
Wow. That's
like,
awesome.
Yes, sir. That would be great. So, you go out, free CMA or whatever it was at the time. But my point is, if you don't take action, you're just hoping. If you take action, you're either going to fail until you figure it out, or you're going to, you're going to meet people who, if your likability factor is strong enough, they're going to want to help you and do things too, if you give to receive. So you have to think about what value am I giving to this person? And if I'm not giving them value, then you need to step back and think about, how am I ever going to get that? Just no different if someone approached you. If they approached you with an opportunity, or, hey, we're doing this, network event, or, do you have anything to add in here? It really changes, the way they look at it. And exactly. We even talked about, in the beginning, I had nothing to do. Like I was new once I got stuff with the newsletter, and it was smaller at the time. So I just started previewing houses that have been on the market. And I figured if I'm going to truly say, originally it was neighborhood specialist, but then you can buy those sign writers. So now, it was neighborhood expert or area expert, because we wanted to be like the expert. I had to know all these models, and it's really a sickness now. Like people call me like, oh, you're in that. Did you do this? And did you do the extended patio? And did you do this? And they're like, okay, we get it. You know what you're talking about. But I'm telling you, when you go to that front door and they open the door, if you've never been in that neighborhood, been in that house, you know how that feels. I mean, we still have it today. We get stuff outside, half hour, 45 minutes. It takes me a lot longer to research that area, do a good CMA, and feel confident that I can serve them at the highest level. When you're talking about your farm, you could call me and I could be there. I could tell you on the phone, or I could be there in a half hour and be ready to go. But the confidence level goes up. And then, when you tell people, hey, I live, in this area, not driving back to Scottsdale or driving over to here. like I've got a vested interest in this community also. Like this, I own property in here. I own rentals here now, which you don't always want to say that. Not everybody loves rentals, but that's where I think the biggest thing for me was just once I started to know the builders, the floor plans, I could talk about the golf course, what was happening with the schools. Oh, you guys have a family. Would you like me to introduce you to the principal over there? There was just so many cool things that came from it. And then we still had new construction. And that turned out to be a great thing for me too, because I would literally run my route and just stop in and see them once a month or some more frequently, if I was out showing. But what happened is they started to see me showing up all the time, caring, knowing the area, that I started getting referrals from the builders. People had a house to sell to buy their house. And so just amazing when you take action and how the opportunities show up, right? But you have to do it in that order. And
exactly. I think the expert part is such a key part of it. And that's one of the things I teach. I have the fundamentals of farming, and I call it CPR, which is community, positioning, and relationships. And the positioning is you become an expert and the ambassador for the community. And you can become the expert without, don't even have to have ever sold a home before. You can learn the models, you can learn the businesses, you can learn the community. And that's how when we built our farm, we learned the models, we got all the flooring, the drawing plans. We knew what elevations there were, what models they were, and we could walk in and tell people how much square footage they have. And it just creates trust. Like you said, it makes it easier to price the home. And a lot of agents get hung up, I find, on figuring out how to position themselves and differentiate themselves. And if you become that expert, it becomes so much easier. And then opportunities open. Like you said, you're starting to see things. The builders are contacting you. People are reaching out to you. And that expert doesn't have to take that long to become the expert. And that can really catapult you quickly.
Well, and it does. And I think that's what we're both aligned in that vision is just because you're starting a geographic farm in an area doesn't mean you're still not doing real estate wherever else it calls. Right. So
exactly.
But the idea is if you don't have a listing, can you sit an open house for someone in there and you start talking to people? And now we have these like grocery bags that for our charity, and it's like a food drive. And so, you door knock 100 homes before, say, hey, we're going to be at the Johnsons from 10 to 2 on Saturday. We'd love you to, we're doing this canned food drive, because you can do that year round because they always need it. And what would happen is we're getting sellers now coming to our open house because they're the neighbors. And if you can start meeting the neighbors face to face, then they see your signs, they see you're doing good things in the community. But it's that give to receive versus, door knocking and saying, I'm doing an open house. People are very defensive to that. When you're holding like a grocery bag with like a flyer that says, this is what we're doing in the community, completely softer approach. It doesn't feel salesy. And honestly, my agents, that we don't mind doing it because it doesn't feel like you're going to get told, get off my property, all the things that go on. And by the way, the Ring cameras are beautiful now because you just talk to the camera. It's like you're now getting face to face. Like, hey, it's Kenny Klaus. Hey, here's what we're doing. And people get freaked out. I'm like, they're listening. It records. Just go ahead and say what your purpose is and what you're doing. And it's so funny how people like, oh my gosh, what about this? Like, lean into it. Like, just try it and just see what happens. But
I love that idea for the open house, because it totally transforms the purpose of it. You're still serving the main purpose, which is opening the house, but it gives you an in, and you're touching people or connecting with people outside of that, even if they're not interested in creating more value. So that's a great. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Well, and a lot of the stats on people who, after one house sells, there's X amount sells, like depending, per neighborhood typically. And you can break it down, but depending on the size, it could be 1,000 homes. Usually there's going to be 2 or 3 more homes within a couple blocks that in the next 3 months that go on the market. If you've done enough signs and you do like a great open house, like I had 14 A-frames, and I would sit open house. Well, then I started sitting at the golf course parking lot that was in the center of the community with, at the time I was with Remax, I had a Remax balloon, I had my golf cart, and I'd have an easy up and I'd say free list to area homes for sale. And my vision there is everyone driving through there lives there. I mean, a high percentage, and all they keep seeing every Sunday is all these signs out and free list. And they're going, this guy's working. I haven't even talked to my agent. My agent's never even shown my property. All the things that we hear, right? That people expect. And I would literally, they'd follow me in the golf cart and I'd go show them houses. Because I thought, well, if I'm sitting at a 3,000 square foot house, they only may want a 1,500. So there's their budget. If I could sit a general type thing, then I could go show everything. And so, and a lot of this was because I didn't have listings. I didn't have business at the time. I wanted to build a 20-lane highway and I only needed one. I didn't really realize what I was doing at the time. It just seemed like the right thing to do. And I didn't mind working. Like I enjoyed doing work and doing a good job, and just trying to be world-class at what you're doing versus kind of half-ass, like, oh, I did an open house for 4 hours. Well, what'd you do? I put up 4 signs. Okay, well, if we put up 14 and some blow-up guys and a couple banners and you door knock 100, 200 homes before, what does that now look like? And, it's not rocket science. It's just our industry has gotten, pretty lax and pretty comfortable the way things have been. But look out, because technology now has jumped in, and the Phoenix market specifically has completely changed the landscape. So,
and that's why it's so important to build those relationships. And that's why it's important to have those connections in the community, because you can't replace that with technology. That the relationships with the local business owners, the relationships with the people in the community are going to be a lot stronger when you do that correctly. And if you're half-assing and trying to be all over the place, you're not going to have those. And that can absolutely solidify your place in the community, but you got to put the work in, like you said.
Well, what we're finding now is, like, we had Open Door launch here 7-8 years ago, and then OfferPad, of course, then Zillow had theirs, and then you got, all this stuff going on now. I mean, there's just, everybody's got some kind of new toy. Technology was, in the beginning, it was one thing. Now it's, people are overwhelmed by all, and they have to give out their information. And so we're just like, hey, we're the one-stop shop. We can use all these programs, help guide you through all of your different options, and you pick what's best for you. Not everybody fits in the same box. There's more than one way to buy and sell real estate today, which, by the way, is exciting for all of us. And if you lean into it, because look, as an agent, you're like, hey, use me. If you're an agent, but now you're a seller and you're like, oh, they'll just buy my house and I can close in 15 days or 35 days and not have to deal with anything. It's an interesting model. And so I think that there's a segment of consumer who everything is so fast now. When you choose, you want to sell, you want to sell, you want to buy, you want to buy. And so, I mean, there's different correlation to it. Don't get me wrong. It's still an emotional experience for people, because it's not something they're doing like taking an Uber where you can have a bad experience. Who cares if book a hotel or a flight? That's a transactional. This is more like, this is a lifetime event for most people.
So I want to ask you then about tying it all together, because I find some agents they take on too much, and then they have a hard time pulling their brand and pulling all their efforts to kind of funnel it into working for them. You obviously said you're not a big sales, but you don't like to sell, so you like to just be out there. How do you kind of take all those avenues and those things, and how do you funnel it into your brand or to what you're working on in the community?
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest thing for me, and I failed at this for a long time, was just finding that who in your life. Most real estate agents are, we're wired to go stir it all up. And then, like I would say, like, I'll go out and hunt it and kill it and bring it back, but someone else has got to cook it and make it look good. Right? This is not my thing. And, there's a book called Rocket Fuel and a couple others that talk about really that visionary and then the implementer. And as an agent, I was no shortage of ideas, to the point where I drive people nuts, because I was like, we should try this. But there was no execution. So it'd fizzle out, a day later, a week later, and very few things really got executed. And then in 2010, I got in business with, not at the time knowing where it was going to go, but with a gentleman. And turns out he's been the who, and it was like rocket fuel for us, because I can sit and have an idea, a thought, a vision of what this should look like. And all of a sudden the website's built, or the marketing piece, or the blog is written, and social media is done. And, and so it's because it's overwhelming when you're trying to do all those things as an individual agent, but it can be done. I did it. You just have to have a calendar of kind of, what's my theme each day? What am I working on? Social media, I got to make sure I'm getting content for that. I got to make sure I'm getting this content for the newsletter. But my point is, it was always very purposeful. Now at the scale we do, you have to have the who's and those to really keep up with it all. But it didn't start that way. Now today's world, there's virtual assistants, there's affordable stuff out there too that can help somebody.
So where are you seeing things going now in the future? You talked about changes in technology and things like that. Where are you guys shifting to, or what are you working on going forward as far as your farm goes?
Well, we've just been big on learning all these programs. So, Open Door, OfferPad, Knock, Homeward, Home Partners. And our thing is like like if I go to a restaurant, for example, and there's a menu and just has, one item on there, yet there's a restaurant next door that has, say, 15 items.
Yeah.
Which one am I most likely going to go to? Say they're very similar, right? Say they're the same type of business.
Yep.
So if we don't have a menu of services to offer people, I think that's where the education for agents they have to really understand these and not be afraid of them, because the consumers are finding them. And so we started a brand called Offer Depot. We were marketing that separately, where it was kind of like, we'll go get you multiple offers on your house plus a go-to-market value. What I mean by this is I think that we don't spend time like I used to. I used to spend a lot of time on search and showing houses and doing a lot of things that I don't do today, because people, not that I want them to on their own, but they do find houses and they send you. And of course, a lot of times it's stuff that's outdated or whatever. But the point is, consumers finding a lot of the properties. And, for us to go, especially in the markets right now, you're showing a house, and then as soon as the next one comes on, you're showing. It's not like, I used to set up 20 houses on Friday and 20 houses on Saturday, and then trying to remember which one. So we have to lean into technology as a tool, get educated. If not, you're going to become the tool of technology, right? You're going to become the Uber driver of this business, where you're just showing houses for a salary, not for, a commission. And salary is going to be hard to keep people, because people don't realize how much work it really is to be an agent, and the time. So I think adapting to the markets in your local area are important. I've helped several people who don't have like an open door type product to create their own within a market before it even gets there. So hey, what would a cash offer like? What would cause you to sell if you could close when you wanted to? Certainty, control. And you'd be amazed at, the flips we did several years ago, before Open Door really got super aggressive in their pricing. People were taking 12% fee, 14% fee. And I finally, one day I just said, do you care if I buy it? And they're like, we don't care who buys it. We'd rather, I'm like, well, I'll just buy it. And they're like, well, do you care if we leave these 2 TVs and the washer dryer and this? And I'm like, leave it all. Like, it's no problem. But adapting, I would say, is critical. I know there's a lot of people who, print's dead and all these things. I can just tell you, we've not stopped. Our market share has continued. In a good market share typically goes down a little bit, because everyone has a license again, and anything can sell. And people, think, well, I can just give it to my friend or whatever. But we still keep positioning. And so I think that, to me, print is still alive when it comes to this stuff. I don't know about, your audience, but I think if a lot of people said, well, how many things do I get from real estate agents in my mailbox anymore? It's very little. And if you take the easy way and just email, we all know how easy that is to delete, block, things like that. And I'm certainly not saying don't follow up with a digital copy and get people to subscribe to that. I think it's great. There's just something about them being able to sit at the kitchen table or on the couch and read through your newsletters. And we've had people, it's crazy. We go to their house and they'll open a drawer and pull out bags full of newsletters. Like one lady, she had like 12 years worth. And I was like, okay, you know how much money that's cost me to get to this name on this one, But, it's just kind of funny. But the loyalty, she's like, oh yeah, we already knew that when we went to sell someday, we're calling you guys. We've seen you everywhere. And so I think it's building blocks, right? Like I wouldn't expect someone, well, I want to be where you're at and I want to have, this big team, and I want to have, and by the way, you may or may not want to, that's a whole nother conversation. But it was just steps. It was just in reinvesting, taking a little off the table and taking time. And like I said, it's still, you can still do your other activities. If you want to pay for pay-per-click and you want to do these other, social media and stuff, just keep in mind, the companies like, HomeLight and, Zillow and these companies, their marketing spend is usually more than any of us agents individually. So when you talk about buying the best, tag words and the things that they can do, pay-per-click is not what it used to be at all for us. And so I think, a Facebook community Facebook page, and if there is one, you try to interact with it. When someone needs a painter, boom, there's Kenny Klaus referring a painter. There's Kenny referring this person. So they're seeing your name. And then local events. If you can hold a first-time buyer workshop, a VA workshop, a selling in today's market. We've done a town hall where we had our town council guy, my brother, myself, and we just did a Zoom meeting during COVID stuff. Just here's a stat, here's where the current market is and here's where we're heading. Yep. And he talked about, some of the businesses coming, the growth, and it gives you some credibility too. When you're sitting there with, the town council person, it gives you even a little bit more credibility. So
yeah, that's awesome.
As you can see, a lot of these things that we're throwing out there were over time.
Yeah, exactly. This is 20 plus years. So
the newsletter, open houses were really, and then starting to visit the local businesses and get the newsletters into the business. Because if I can visit 10 businesses every month, that's 10 more contacts that know people moving in, their customers, or insurance guy. Oh yeah, our people are selling. I told them about you. And then all of a sudden you start, you build on that, and now you're up to 12 and 15. And so, but it forces you to have to walk into a business, by the way. And the first couple of times, you're getting the wrong person, or you're like, oh, this is dumb. What am I doing? Hey, can you just leave this, for your manager or whatever? And you just leave your card and tell them what you're doing. You leave a little flyer on it, say, hey, this is what we're doing. We'd love to see if you'd like to be involved. And, most of them will over time. Some of your corporate ones will get a little bit like, oh, we can't put that in here because of this, until you give them value.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they can do it. And so I just watched it happen. Like, they drew a hard line, and next thing you know, they're like, hey, we're out of newsletters. Can you bring some more? What the hell just happened here?
That's awesome.
We just got to make fun with it, and because it's a ton of work. But if you have fun with it and people like you and you're consistently showing up, then I think you look up in a few years and you're like, I got a business. And that's why I tell people, if you're going to be in this business 2 years from now, 4 years from 5 years, 10, wouldn't it be nice to wake up January 1st and know that you're going to have 250 listing appointments next year in a geographic area?
Yeah, it's huge.
That takes a lot of the stress. And I'm not saying it's automatic, but it becomes automatic. But it's no different than agricultural farming, right? I mean, if the farmer went out and said, Lord, just give me a crop this year, and I promise next year I'll sow or I'll plant the seeds, I'll water it, I'll do all the right things, just give me one this year. It doesn't happen. But what happens is they learn their dirt, they learn their farm, they learn their timing, they learn everything. And all of a sudden it becomes predictable, repeatable. We got to do this time, we got to do this. And then we go to market and we sell all this stuff. And those are the people who end up taking over the farm next door and the next door and next door, because they have a bigger vision. But in farming, there's not an option. Like, you have to do those things if you want a crop. In real estate, it's easy to go to a convention and 1999 yourself or 29.99 yourself to death with stuff that's going to change your life and do all the work for you. And it drives us nuts. I don't know about you, but as busy as I am with multiple businesses and everything's going, my phone rings. It's got to be 10% of what it used to, because everybody texts and emails. For us, it's all pick up the phone and call people. You save a ton of time, especially like in transaction management. Well, I emailed them, like, why don't you just call them? You get the answer and you're done. Like, you're not waiting for them to respond till tomorrow or whatever. So there's things that you can still, do. And I would just say, make sure that just technology is a tool in your business. Just don't let it become your business, because if you're relying on drips and things like that, they can be personal, but people figure it out. And I still think having that, that consistent touch to your past repeat people, and really, what do we talk about? Everyone's number one part of their business is pass repeat referral business. Well, that's really what farming is. It's just like a big data bank.
Exactly.
People that now get to know you, and you become a trusted source over time. But it's that over time piece that eliminates a lot of people.
Exactly. So if you were to give one last piece of advice to our viewers who are thinking about growing and expanding their farm, what advice would you give?
Well, so I always say a budget. And I think, because for me, looking at a geographic area, you want to look at turnover rates, you want to look at the size of the farm, the average price point, because you want to decide, is this a good place to launch my business? Not, I live here and I love it and it's a great community, but there's 20 homes sell annually. And even if you got 25% of those, it's probably not going to pay your bills unless, it's $4 or $5 million price range, right? So, don't lead with emotion, lead with business. And does this make sense? And like I said, it's not always going to make sense, because if I would have looked at mine, I probably would have talked myself out of it. But for me, it was like, I know in a few years, this is untouched area that I can dominate this if I do the right things. And so, but then budget, and the reason I mentioned budget is because you need to set aside, if you think, okay, with newsletter, postage, it's going to cost me, you can put in EDDM, it'll tell you how much the postage will be, and for those routes, and you go, okay, it's going to cost me $1,000 a month. You need to earmark $12,000, and it'd be great if you took it out of an account, went to your bank and created a farm account and just put it in there. And every month you just pay for your next newsletter, whether or not money comes in or not. And to me, you got to set a 12-month plan, because this doesn't happen overnight, but neither does real farming. It takes time for things to develop and happen. So I think there's those, there's a book called 3 Feet from Gold, right? And it's like, you're right there, but you quit because nobody had called you that month. And then by month 3, most are like, I just spent $3,000. This is stupid. I could have bought leads. And I'm going, but try it for 3 more months and 3 more months while you're still doing some of the other stuff. And by the way, you can get a lender to help with a little bit, or there's other ways to help. But if you're going to be in business in 2 years, 3 years down the road, what would it be like if you just started really working in an area and put a foundation under your business that can then grow from there? And to me, then, all the activities they teach and all these courses and everything out there, prospecting and all this stuff, by the way, you still do all that in your farm. You're just focused on it. And then you look up and you're like, okay, this business isn't like starting over the first of every year going, okay, what gimmick am I going to try this year? Or you can't, unless your database is big enough and you're really in that much touch with your database, it's hard to count on that every year to create growth and build a big business. There's people who do it at a very, very high level. And I applaud them. And I think we do it at a pretty good level. But I think you have to have more than one lever there to be growing if you want to go, like I said earlier, from I to we to they. So, I do it to we do it to eventually they do it, but you still are earning a residual income off of the business that you started.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's something I'm a big proponent in believing in start with your budget. That's something I teach all the time. You have to have that budget figured out, because that's going to dictate what you do, when you do, how you do it. And you have to have it set aside. So that's awesome. So we always wrap up.
You're trying to find money every month.
Exactly.
And you're going to go do something else with it, like Amazon or who knows what, right? And so you just create a purpose. Yeah,
exactly. So we always wrap up with the best book. So what's one book that's had an impact in your life, or you think would have an impact on our viewers' life?
So I'll say one, but then I'll probably say a second one. There was a friend of mine that he'd met a billionaire, and he asked him, can you give me a nugget? Can you give me something, like, what have you done? And finally it was like, what book? And the guy gets a book off the shelf. And let me see, actually. Yep. It's funny. I didn't even think about this till you just said it, but, and with my background, you probably won't be able to see it, but I have it right here. And it's called The Tortoise and the Hare. And no matter how many times you read it, what language, this is a kid's book, big print and a couple pictures. But if you think about it, no matter what language, how many times you read it, whatever, the tortoise always wins. And to me, that's been a big thing for me. I mean, I have turtles. To me, it was that slow and steady wins the race. And like, I look at most agents like the rabbit, they're just chasing this new product, this new thing, where slow and steady wins the race. And then as far as book, I would say one that comes to mind right away is just Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Because it really switched us from going like, oh, we're real estate salespeople to we're just guides. We're helping guide you through your story, and it's your story. You're the hero, not how many homes I've sold, how many awards I have, my ego, any of that stuff. It's all focused on value and client experience, and really building a brand that tells a story, but you're telling the client's story. And so like, we changed all of our wraps on our vehicles to have like, people holding keys, or just things to lead people to go, this is what we're doing for people, not here's all my awards and I'm number one. Because at the end of the day, they just don't care. It's got to be about them. And so for me, that book was, really opened my eyes to yeah, we got to switch the folk. We think we are, but then when you really take stock of what you're doing, you're like, yeah, maybe I'm not. And so I think that's a great one. I mean, there's so many out there. I mean, I got a whole library of stuff, but I think that
that's a great book. That's our #1 most recommended book on the show. So I just did I'm putting it on my 75th episode. I'm going to be launching a top rated recommended books on the show, and that's the winner so far. So I'm letting people know. So that's an awesome book. So that's awesome. So how can our viewers check out what you're up to, connect with you, or find out more what you're doing?
Yeah, we so I mean, as far as, you know, in Arizona, if anyone has anyone looking to buy, sell, or just has a real estate question, you know, Kenny at Klaus team or referarizona.com is our referral website. Awesome. Our form's already on there, ready to go. And I have to ask Scott, we had CLME since 2013. We just shut it down recently because we hadn't really had the time to be updating content, but he put it all on YouTube for free. So, nice. So CLME, which was Certified Local Market Expert, should be out there. And it's literally our entire course from before on how do we build the newsletter, and, you know, why did we put things the way we did, and, you know, running the realtor route, and all the items that we've given away over the years. Like we do these water watcher tags. It's just fun stuff that you can do to be part of the community. You know, the network meeting, how we set it up, how we run it, the move-in buckets that my wife puts together. That way you can put coupons in there from local businesses. Another way to add value. Hey, locksmith or whatever, can I put these in here? Carpet cleaning. So we really try to go in detail of what we've done, you know, to really help other agents. Because I think it's the way really to solidify our industry going forward is by, you know, having the neighborhood expert that people go, I trust this guy or gal. They care about the area and they really are knowledgeable. They're not just after commission. They're looking at the big picture. And so I think it's one way for us to really add value to the consumer. Otherwise, everyone has a friend, a family member that has a license that's going to give them half the commission back or whatever. And then it just becomes, we don't even need this. We could have done this on our own. Yeah. And that's always kind of our question at the end for our agents is, you know, let's ask the client, could you have done this without us or only with us? Yeah. And if we're only talking about that's granite and look at that tile, that there's no value there, they can see that. You've got to be pointing out, you've got to learn more about the house. We actually started State 48 homeowner podcast with the idea of everybody sends out a crappy email newsletter to their database that they don't even read and somehow expect everybody to read and call you. But I went, what if we started a podcast where we could talk about the house, have our plumber come in and talk about how to shut off the water to your house. What are the common things that you find, you know, angle stops, whatever, roof, how often should you have it inspected and get the debris out? What causes leaks? We just had a water restoration company come in and talk about what are the main causes of floods or fires that you're seeing, and break that into content. So that way they can just pick an episode that's important to them. We did one on septic. We did one on foundations. And we're still, I think we're 15 episodes. I mean, we're just starting. So
that's awesome.
But the idea is if we sell someone a house and then we send them corny little gifts throughout the year sometimes, or, you know, whatever, really, if we could add value and they were like, oh yeah, I think I saw something on that, or I want to find out more about that. So I'm hoping that works because I think there's value in it. And, you know, we love giving to receive. So just, you know, constantly evolving. I think that's it, but never getting rid of the consistency and the foundation. So awesome. When I say try new things, it's on top of what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Not, you know, and then you just measure it, right? So we track what our lead sources are, where they come from. The only advice I'd give for someone is if you're starting off, is start sourcing this stuff early, and then, and I would consider double sourcing it. And what I mean by that is you have, you know, farm, and then you have pass repeat client or referral or whatever, because what's happened is the farm doesn't get the same credit anymore that we used to, you know, when I'm tracking our numbers, because so many people are now considered past clients,
right?
But the original lead source was the farm.
Yeah,
that's how we got to that contact in the first place. And so I think when you source them, you know, you want to put, how did we originally meet these people? So you can always pull that data, and then are they pass repeat now? Because you want to get credit, you know, too, for your business. Like, hey, we got enough pass repeat. You don't want to keep them as farm for the life, my opinion, lifetime. But you want to know that's what caused that first lead.
Awesome.
So
Awesome. Well, we'll put the connections in the show notes to help people can find out what you're up to. Kenny, I really appreciate being on the show and bringing your decades of experience and wisdom. And I know our viewers are really going to take a lot out of this, and hopefully they'll implement and take the advice you give and start to put this into the business. Because if they do, and they do it consistently, then they will see the results. So I appreciate you being on the show and bringing that to our audience.
Definitely, man. Well, I appreciate you doing it. I think the industry needs it. I think it's a good foundation to build a business off of. And I'm glad that you're doing it. That's why when you reached out, I'm like, yeah, I want to keep spreading the word, because I think it's a great tool to build a consistent, repeatable business.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you guys. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks for checking out today's episode. If you'd like more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and our other social media channels. Looking forward to bringing you more great content like this, and happy farming.